Hello, 2021 sees the 30th anniversary of the Kinesiology Federation, and as part of our celebrations, we're interviewing people who are connected with the Kinesiology Federation or have supported and influenced us over those 30 years. I'm Phil Clubley, I'm the current chairperson of the Kinesiology Federation, and it's my great pleasure today to be speaking with Philip Rafferty. Philip is the founder of Kinergetics Reset, and that is also celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Is that right, Philip?
Yes, this month actually.
Oh, brilliant! How did Kinergetics come about? Where did that start from?
Well, it came from I was a touch health instructor, and I was always interested in the fastest way to correct anything, and developed Kinergetics in 1991 after 10 years of using touch health, hypertonics and applied physiology were the main systems I used, although I did most of the other systems. And actually, in the early days, actually organized many of the workshops and many of the international people who came over. I used to organize, and even when I wasn't organizing, I've had many of them stayed at my house. And Matthew Fee and Wayne Topping stay at my house while they did workshops to make it easier for them. So.
Brilliant. And you're in Tasmania at the moment, is that right?
Yes. That's the south little island off the coast of Victoria.
Oh, brilliant. So are you doing a lot of online stuff at the moment, or are you still able to get about?
No, it's Kinergetics is one of the workshops. It's very difficult to teach online. And even like Reset is a very easy workshop. It's like a 3.5 or 4 hour workshop. And it could have been taught online if it actually wasn't so powerful. We've had one of my other instructors had a dentist in the workshop who had, because as a dentist is exposed to a lot of mercury, and he fainted in the workshop.
Wow.
Now, if that had been online, she wouldn't have been able to put him back together.
Yes.
So Reset sort of relaxes the jaw muscles, which relaxes the whole body. Literally every muscle in the body starts to relax, and that can release heavy metals, other toxins. So in the workshop, we teach how to help and put people back together. In fact, it was through in the early days of Kinergetics and then Reset by people spinning out because it was powerful. I had to learn how to put people back together and got really good at it. So now we often put people back together in other kinds of workshops.
Brilliant.
So yes, I feel it's too powerful. But the simple one, just energy positions on the head, relaxing the jaw muscles, is too powerful. Because if somebody faints and you're not there, you can't help.
Yes.
And the kinesiology part, it's really hands-on in Kinergetics, and I don't believe that can be taught online.
Good stuff. So what was life like for you before kinesiology? I seem to remember you mentioning you did quite a few jobs before kinesiology came along.
Probably 50 different jobs. I mean, worked in an office in Warrington, then a cardboard factory, then a barman, then a wine waiter. Then I went over to Australia at age 25. I wanted an adventure. It was a big decision. And went over to Perth, Western Australia. And my first job was working in a brick factory, outdoors stacking bricks, because that was the only job I could get at the time. It's funny when they interview people, it's often the economy changes by the time you actually get out there. So yeah, there's plenty of work, and then when I got out there, jobs are in short demand. And then I found out why Midland Brick always had vacancies, because it was incredibly hard work. So yeah, I'm from England, and you know how warm it is in England. Well, for the first week in that job, 40 degrees every day working outdoors.
Gosh.
That's centigrade, right? So unbelievably hot.
Yeah.
And just stubborn. I refused to quit, but it was really, really hard work.
Wow, so you got some adventure then. And have you stayed over in Australia since then? Have you? I mean, I guess you've traveled back for workshops. I know you came over for the kinesiology conference in I think it was 2018 or 2019, and did a demonstration which was really good. So obviously you haven't been traveling much lately, but was coming back to the UK, did that happen quite a bit?
For the first few years as in Australia, I went back every 3 or 4 years to see my family. And once I started in the mid-90s, I started coming back virtually every year. And then probably for the last 20 years, it is virtually every year. And at times I was actually traveling 7 months a year.
Wow.
Well, it got to, and I was renting, in Australia, it got to the stage where the last time it was ridiculous. I was paying 5 months rent and not being there. So I actually left a house. And then when I got back, I thought, well, I'll just rent another, but then rents had changed. There's a big shift in price of housing. Even paying rent up front, I couldn't get one. So that's when I moved to Tasmania.
Right.
And so I've now been here about 14, 15 years in Tasmania.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant.
But then I bought a house, and now it's easier to travel. It's expensive to travel. And I was, as I said, traveling 7 months a year often, which was really tiring as well. The flying was exhausting.
Yes.
That hard work. And teaching around the world. And the last few years before COVID, it was just 3 months a year. So I would go over to Europe or America and went to India. That was fun, teaching a bunch of about 30 physiotherapists, mostly physiotherapists in a class in India, including the ex-physio for the Indian cricket team. So.
Oh, wow.
Some really good physio there, and they blew my mind with what they could do, and I blew their minds with what kinesiology could do.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Did each other really well.
Sorry, did you discover kinesiology in Australia then?
Yes, I was in Noosa in Queensland in 1980, and there's a lady doing food sensitivity testing. Health food shop, and she held sugar next to my cheek, probably the prostate gland, and said, hold your arm out like anti-deltoid test, and my arm just went weak. And I said, there's no way she could do that. That didn't happen. Do it again. I wasn't ready. Happened again. Try this arm. I wasn't ready. Again. It took about 3 minutes. But once I'm convinced, I was really convinced, and I had to learn how to do it. Maybe I just wanted it for a party trick at the time, but the rest, as they say, is history. And nobody at that time was teaching more than Touch Health 1. I think it was a weekend later, they had a Touch Health workshop, which I went to. And so I found it really amazing. I love Touch Health. And nobody else was teaching more advanced workshop at the time. So I phoned up Pasadena, California, Touch Health, North Lake Avenue, Pasadena. And I asked where in the world was anyone teaching more advanced Touch Health. And they said, well, we have an instructor workshop here next month. I think it's about a month away. And I said, book me in. And that was a very steep learning curve to go from Touch Health 1 with very little practice to go to Touch Health instructor.
Wow.
It's really impossible, but I actually stayed behind in America and a couple of months later, I went back and did another instructor workshop. So to make me a bit more confident.
Did you just teach then, or did you become a practitioner as well? Did you see clients?
Okay, on the way back from Australia, I called in at Hawaii. I had a friend who had a 56-foot yacht, and he had some friends, and I organized a free workshop. I taught a free workshop because I thought if it was free, no one could complain. So I didn't feel that confident. So I might have been the first to teach in Hawaii, I don't know. So that was in the island of Kauai, which is a beautiful island. So yeah, I taught there, then I went back to Darwin, and I asked some of my friends in Darwin which is the best place in Australia where something like that would go. I did teach in Darwin, but then I asked where the best place would be for alternate therapies, and they said Melbourne. So drove down to Melbourne. That's from Darwin. That's a long way, by the way. And,
It is, yeah.
I stayed in in Melbourne a long time. I organized 3 more instructor training workshops with Bruce Dew, and helped organize the first 3 instructor workshops there, and helped get it going in Melbourne. And at one time I was doing 10 festivals or shows, we call them, a year, including some that were 4 or 5 days long.
Wow.
And so that's how I got proficient, is just experience. I mean, just remember at these shows, people had never heard of it. So if you did anything wrong, they didn't know. You didn't do the test quite right, get it reasonable, and then perfect it a little bit later. So I was literally sometimes 8 or more hours a day working at these festivals.
Wow. So I guess back then, kinesiology wasn't really as well known in Australia as it is now, because Australia is really big for kinesiology now, isn't it? Yeah.
So that was really big in the 80s. It was, you know, I was probably the main one doing demonstrations everywhere, helping promote it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's brilliant for being there right at the start of that. So I know you mentioned when you've been doing the TMJ that dentist fainted. What other sort of transformations have you seen, you know, in either your life through kinesiology or in clients and classes?
I was at a conference in London I think it was 2014, I think it was. And this is a nutrition conference with world experts in nutrition and medical doctors trained in nutrition. And the theme of the conference was fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And I've been seeing clients with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. I was just starting to get into that then. And I went into cognitive dissonance because this world expert from Canada said that with this latest nutrition and doing exactly this protocol, it figured out that it can make a small improvement in chronic fatigue in 3 months. And it's like, you have to be kidding me. Because remember, I live in Tasmania. I literally did not know what everyone in the world was doing. I knew doctors weren't having much success. And I just could not believe that I was regularly seeing changes in chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia in one session. And several clients in 5 minutes, literally. And I'll explain why later. And it took me years to figure out why. What they were missing, even the world experts, why these nutritional experts literally were using so much nutrition that wasn't being utilized. Basically, that's it. And it was because their clients were in fight flight. So the clients were in fight, flight, freeze, or survival, which I see as linear. It's not either or, it's like a linear thing in degrees. So if you're in full survival, what happens is the body shuts everything down. It shuts down the digestion, right? So you then can't assimilate nutrition, okay? And also what happens is the pH of the stomach changes, and you need acidic pH to assimilate zinc. Zinc is your body's defense against viruses and allergies. And the other thing, if you go into full survival, the body cannot eliminate heavy metals from the body. Right. And that took years and years to figure that out. So in the last few years, I've really figured that out. So you can have the best nutrition, any other methodology, lots of great methods, but if you don't correct the fight flight, you cannot fix it. You cannot fix the problem. And I've seen unbelievable results with that. There was a girl in Germany who was in survival, and she had, they showed me the x-rays, her second set of teeth hadn't come through. She was 13 years old. Wow. And that's the age, they should come through much, much earlier than that. They hadn't come through. I was the last resort. If I couldn't fix this, when she got home, the dentist was just going to take out all her teeth. That's the only thing they could do. And then the others would come through. But that's really traumatic. And I'd never seen anything like this. I thought, well, just do the regular test. So with my testing, she showed massive survival. In fact, the way I test, one of the tests is testing with adrenaline and cortisol, see how far away they react. I couldn't get far enough away in the room. I had somebody hold the vial. We went into the corridor, probably as far away as on a long corridor, she was still reacting to adrenaline and cortisol. And that was massive survival. So remember, in survival, everything else is unimportant. Digestion is unimportant. Next set of teeth is unimportant. Puberty is not important. All of these things switch off if you're in full survival. And if you're in fight flight, some of them reduce. Some of these things are affected, but she was literally in full survival. Just did the regular correction. 6 weeks later, I got an email saying the teeth had started to come through. And it was like, this is what kept me going. It's like, it is unbelievable results you can get. I had similar things with 2 teenage boys, age 15, still not reached puberty. And one of them was the son of one of my organizers. And the next time I went to Germany, I didn't recognize him because it shot up about 4 inches. It was like, and slimmed down because he'd used all that weight to grow. It was unbelievable to see the difference, because, as I said, puberty is not important if you're in survival. Yeah. And with regular fight flight, there are very specific muscles that are affected. So in Kinergetics now, with a few years of research, I mapped out all the reactive muscles involved. So if you're in, and they're different. So if you're in a fight state, you have certain reactive muscles. If you're in a flight state, you have different reactive muscles. And they're very, very important. So I'll give you a few of them. So the upper trapezius is a reactor. Rhomboids is a reactor. And that is really important. I'll get to something later why those two are so important. And the upper trapezius will switch off latissimus dorsi, supraspinatus, and middle deltoid, for instance. So they'll be the reactives. And the rhomboids will switch off pectoralis major clavicular, supraspinatus, and also middle deltoid. Right, so these are really important. And just on a side note, just fixing those reactives by working on it, I do it by correcting the TMJ. I have a TMJ correction, and that takes people out of fight flight. Just doing that correction on 10 different people, we're averaging 50% improvement in push-ups. I mean, it's mind-blowing, this stuff of sports, and hardly anyone is working with sports. There's not many people specialize in sports. 50% improvement. And the reason is, you know, you're trying to do push-ups, but the rhomboids are switching off your pecs and the middle deltoid. So every rep you do, it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Take them out of fight flight, and then, you know, they can do, we've had 75% improvement in push-ups from 20 to 35 on a few people. So it's unbelievable. But anyway, there's another reason that's important when you get to vitamin D. So vitamin D is really, really important for the immune system, right? It helps with immunity. And with vitamin D, you've got, it's really important how vitamin D is assimilated in the body. So vitamin D has 3 conversions in the body. Through the skin is the first one. So if you go out in the sun, you go home, firstly, a lot of people put sunscreen on, which blocks it. But even if you don't use sunscreen, you go home, you have a shower, you've just massively reduced the conversion, because the conversion can take 24 hours in the skin. Okay.
Right.
If you're in fight flight, your rhomboids relates to the liver, and the upper trapezius relates to the kidneys, and that affects the second and third conversions because they're in the liver and kidneys. So vitamin D is massively affected if you're in fight flight. That's one of that's new, very new research. So my future research will involve MS. Multiple sclerosis is massively affected by where you are. If you're above 31 degrees, is it? Or 41 degrees, something like that, it massively affects much more prevalence of MS because it's to do with not enough vitamin D. With the flight state, you've got the main muscles, the reactors, main ones, the hamstrings, gastrocnemius, and flexor hallucis longus. But the problem is those 3 muscles all switch off the quadriceps. So if you happen to be a runner or an Olympic athlete, it has to make a difference.
Yeah.
I don't know how much difference it would make an Olympic athlete, but it would have to make a difference because you have 3 different muscles if you're in a flight state switching off the quadriceps. I'd love to be able to say I've worked on our Olympic swimmers who are actually at the moment Australia are 5th in medals at the moment, and we're 55th in population. That's not bad. So I wish I could say I worked on them, but I haven't. I actually went to the Australian Institute of Sport, showed them some of the sports stuff. This is a long time ago, much more basic than we're using now. And they said, we can see it works, but it's not government accredited and we can't use it.
Yeah.
I went to, I actually had a client that was the coach of a football team. So it's not like Manchester United, it's AFL, but it's big over here. So that's the equivalent over here, Australian football, where they kick the ball and catch it as well. I've never actually watched a game, but the coach came to see me because he'd heard good reports, and he was so impressed. He said he was going to bring the whole team, and he came back next week. I could see something was wrong. He looked really, really apologetic. He said the doctors have said over their dead bodies.
Oh my goodness.
So it's really hard to get into sports because you're not a medical doctor or a physiotherapist. So even though I teach physiotherapists and medical doctors, it's really hard to break into, to get accepted into sports. I even worked on a world champion kickboxer who won his world championship 6 weeks after I worked on him. And he said, what I did absolutely made his reflexes faster, which is amazing.
Yes.
And a lot of that was like hypertonics, which, have you heard of hypertonics?
Yes.
Yeah, so there are a few people that I think teach it in England. Kayla Carroll was teaching that, I'm sure. She was an amazing practitioner of that as well. That was basically stretching all the muscles, and it used to take me 2 sessions going really fast. I used to be really fit when I was younger, so 2 really hard sessions, and I tried to cheat. I tried fast ways of doing it. No, you had to go through and basically stretch every muscle in the body. With the new corrections I've got, I do that in around about 10 minutes. Because it's TMJ and there's a fascia correction as well in the latest workshop, which I actually might put that in a one-day workshop for people who have done kinesiology, because it's unbelievable. If you combine the TMJ correction and the fascia correction, it corrects hypertonic muscles, and unbelievable amount of other things get corrected.
Incredible. Just going back slightly, so clients with these fight and flight and survival responses, what sort of trauma have they gone through that's led them to that? You know, were you able to find out what the traumatic trigger was, or is it something that had been acquired sort of subconsciously for them?
You don't need a big trauma. It's like you could have 5 or 10 small stresses. And there's so many different kinds of stresses that people don't know are stresses. So I'll rattle off some of the most common traumas that people don't realize are traumas. Okay, being bullied as a child, right? So this could be 10, 20, 30 years ago, but you're in fight flight all day and you're having nightmares at night, right? So you're basically in fight flight 24 hours a day. Dental braces, that's a massive one. And Sheldon Deal did a great demonstration on YouTube, demonstrating 3 different traumas, which are root canals, sprained ankles, and mammograms, and how they affect the whole neurology of the body a long way away from where the injury is. And they're 3 massive things that really, really, you know, are basically traumas. So you've also got, you can have heavy metal trauma. I've seen EMF trauma. I presented at a conference on fibromyalgia in south of England, somewhere near Southampton it was. And we worked on about 30 people with fibromyalgia, including a lady that's in a wheelchair. She'd been in a wheelchair. One of my students who'd only done half of Kinergetics, had done B&T in units 1 to 3, so that's about half of Kinergetics, and he was in his 80s. He got her out of the wheelchair when doctors couldn't, and her father was a medical doctor. I actually met him, she organized for me later, but he got her out of the wheelchair. She was still in chronic pain, so he hadn't fixed all the pain. In 5 minutes, I cleared the pain, and it worked and stayed. It stayed. And that was just taking out of that final bit of fight flight. And so we worked on a whole pile of people. But there's another lady there that had fibromyalgia, cleared the pain. The next day it came back, and it took me on. I had a whole list of main causes of fibromyalgia, and this wasn't in that list of main causes. So I just tried everything else that I had. In the end, it was the Wi-Fi. So tell Wi-Fi for her, put her in fight flight. Now, at the time, I didn't know why, and now we do. So Wi-Fi, and that would have been 3G, I'm sure then. 4G is worse and 5G is even worse. And what Wi-Fi does, it's getting the exact word here, it's like it vibrates or it shakes the metals in the body. It affects, all the metals are affected, and those metals then affect the whole immune system. They massively affect the immune system. So the more metals that you have, the more you're affected by Wi-Fi. Especially mercury, aluminium is really bad. Talking about fibromyalgia, the other things that really affect fibromyalgia, it's mostly fight flight. If you're in fight flight, you're magnesium deficient, right? And you'll be calcium excess, because the body can't use the calcium if you don't have the magnesium. So fight flight burns up magnesium, absolutely burns it up. So it's impossible to have enough magnesium if you're in fight flight. I've had cases where people have said, but I've been taking it every day for years. I said, no, you're still massively deficient. I had one guy had 5 sessions in a flotation tank. Each tank is half a ton of magnesium sulfate, and through the skin is the fastest way to get magnesium in the body. And he was massively magnesium deficient because it had a big trauma. One trauma, and he was worse than he was months ago before the 10 sessions in the flotation tank. And so I've had it proved again and again and again. And magnesium deficiency means you can't use your calcium. Your calcium, and the body says, okay, I know calcium is important, so I'll store it till I need it. And it runs out of places to store it. And to me, arthritis is calcium in the bones, technically the tendon insertions, according to some experts. And fibromyalgia is calcium in the muscles. It's that simple. And the other things that can cause fibromyalgia is, apart from calcium, it can be calcium. So if you were to just hold calcium over the points, it may not show. Calcium can combine with other things. And this fooled me for a while, right? I checked calcium, it should be calcium, but it wasn't. It was calcium fluoride. So if you have fluoride in the water, then that affects the calcium. It can combine with the calcium, and you could have a vial of calcium, doesn't show. Vial of fluoride, it doesn't show. Hold the two together, and it's calcium fluoride. And major one. And the other one is aluminium fluoride, is another major one. And sugar, artificial sweeteners. So they can be deadly, and that's especially teenagers. So the first thing I suspect, it's usually teenage girls for some reason, that's the first thing I suspect is artificial sweeteners. And literally exact same symptoms as fibromyalgia. But you just hold the sweetener over where the pain is, usually over the muscles. And because as soon as you correct the TMJ, you're taking them out of fight, flight, and survival. And the magnesium can now be used. As soon as you change the reaction to adrenaline and cortisol, now they can use the magnesium. The magnesium goes in and pulls out the calcium. If you're allowed to use homeopathics to just speed that process up, you can use Schussler. It's in different numbers, different countries, it's magnesium. Schussler, it's number 7 in most countries, but it can be different. If you're allowed to use that, that does it a little bit quicker. I had somebody that had chronic pain, but it was arthritis all around the bone, and it's like really thick, lumpy arthritis, and that took a few months of taking homeopathics to clear. So I did the main correction so the body can get to it. And you've improved hydration. So the water can go in, it takes in the magnesium. The magnesium pulls out the calcium, and I've seen fibromyalgia change in 5 minutes. From one lady, I think it was 60 medical doctors she'd seen, and chronic pain, 5 minutes the pain went. And within a session, I've seen energy change, people with chronic fatigue, dramatic change in energy.
I know you've obviously done a lot of demonstrations in your time. So do you have a really concise way of explaining what kinesiology is? Or do you go around the houses like the rest of us?
I've actually done hundreds of demonstrations in 21 or 22 countries, right? So the best way is you either ask them to hold out their arm and do a few tests, run a meridian backwards, which for 40 years I've been running meridians backwards. And on further research, Richard Utt found out that the only reason the meridian switches off is because it's out of balance. You know, you can actually fix the meridian so it doesn't switch off running backwards. You think you know everything, then that comes up, and we figured out a way to do that in Kinergetics now. So, but for most people, it will work. Even strong people, run it backwards, middle deltoid maybe, and so they can see it works. Ask them to think of a stress. I do a test. It's not supraspinatus, it's a brain degradation test where the arms are held higher, if you like, in about this position. And that's a really good test for the brain for stress. And they think of the stress, and usually goes weak, do whatever correction you have, and then it comes strong. I've even done that with big traumas. And so I used to use that correction when demonstrations, it's easier standing. But now we've got a more advanced trauma correction. I've done around about 5,000 trauma corrections, and I now confidently work on any trauma. And I've had traumas, people with trauma so big that if I told you, it'd probably put you in trauma. And it's with probably 99% of people have a huge improvement, huge reduction in trauma. In fact, we did a research thing around the world with the trauma as well in the Unit 6 trauma workshop, and the students were reducing trauma to less than 1 out of 10. It didn't matter whether it was 10 out of 10 to start with. On average, less than 1 out of 10. That's pretty good for students.
That's incredible. It is.
That's any trauma. And remember, the TMJ on average is reducing that by 50%. So it makes it easier. You only have halfway to go.
It's just been amazing listening to you, Philip. Yeah, I've really enjoyed that. Loads of incredible information, plus hearing about your experiences as well. So have you got a pearl of wisdom to share with us? I know you mentioned showing us the sticks and the TMJ.
Would you like to know the best TMJ test?
Of course I would.
Okay, so this is for kinesiologists, right? So you need to be able to test quadriceps, sartorius, psoas, and gluteus medius. And they have a virtually 100% relationship to the jaw muscles. Okay? So you test those first. So just test those, and then you need 2, they're called tongue depressors, exhibit A and B. Actually, it's really hard. It's back to front, which way you move to the tongue depressors, and you will test those 4 muscles again with the sticks flat this way. And just very, very gently biting. what the biting does, it activates your main jaw muscles, masseter and temporalis. For years, I didn't know why it worked. And I realized your masseter and temporalis are reactor muscles. Okay, so those two reactor muscles can possibly switch off hundreds of other muscles in the body.
Wow.
This is why you get the incredible corrections, like on 42 muscles. Quite often we'll just fix in like that and fix the reactives. You could check all the reactives first. There's 5 reactors related to fight, 5 reactors related to flight. It just fixes them all. So you've literally fixed 10 reactors and 20 reactives or so. Oh, and the other test you do, so if any of those are out, quadriceps sartorius, psoas, gluteus medius, with the sticks flat, TMJ's out. And the third test is this way. Very gently again, very gently binding on the sticks. And that's just a different test. And you'll usually only need that test if someone's been grinding their teeth. It's to do with the distance between the top and bottom teeth. If they've been grinding their teeth, we used to end up with just putting one more sticks, you know, until we had about 10 sticks. And someone said, to save trees, why not just turn them over? So 2 sticks like this or like that, and you need to pass that test. So it's 3 different ways. The 4 muscles sticks flat, 4 muscles sticks 90 degrees. Out of thousands of clients, students that are tested, how many people do you think have passed that test?
Go on.
1. Only 1 client. This is an amazing test because you're finding something out of balance. And if you're working on, especially on males, you found something out. And when you're testing that quadriceps, I've worked on bodybuilders, there's no way you can push that. Demos I've had where I'm on floorboards with a strong massage table and the massage table moves. You know, if they're a heavy enough person, the whole massage table moves. There's no way you can fake that test. You put the sticks in, it's flat. It's just unbelievable. So basically, you know the TMJ is fixed when those tests are clear. I do not move on to do any other correction until that's fixed, because I believe you're wasting time.
Okay, makes a lot of sense.
Fix things as fast as I can in the least amount of time. So you start using this, you're going to see clients for less sessions, but you're going to have more clients.
Yes. Yeah, I'm signing up for your next workshop.
Yeah, you're going to have great results. And
It sounds incredible.
By the time you fix that, chronic, on average, your chronic pain will be more than 50% reduced. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Fight, flight, and TMJ, but they're connected, because as I said, if you don't fix the TMJ, you're not going to get the huge improvement.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, you know, some of the testimonials we have, you know, we've got over 100 YouTube videos. I used to do videos. We had one in Sydney where I worked on 15 people, and it was less than 30 minutes each one, and they're on YouTube, and they're unbelievable results. We asked the people with fibromyalgia, arthritis, chronic fatigue, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and so the videos were done the same day. So literally 15 people, half-hour videos, all done the same day. One lady had chronic mercury toxicity and never had any improvement in this feeling in her body. In that time, massive improvement. So chronic fatigue. There's one lady, I wish we had 2 cameras. We had one video camera doing the afters, and there's one lady who couldn't walk straight. This would have been worth like $1 million in publicity. She literally was almost walking in a circle. I put her on the table, and every muscle on one side was out of balance. I've actually had this a few times on clients. So that tells you the TMJ is really out of balance on one side. Okay, so it's the side with everything out of balance. The jaw muscles will be really tight on the same side. I know the crossover thing that happens, but it'll actually be on the same side. So just for fun, I just did a quick fix on the TMJ on the same side, and she walked in a straight line. It was unbelievable, you know, to see that happen. And I said all those are online, so you can actually see them, and especially those Sydney ones are probably the best because they're the sickest people. You know, I've done a lot more. There's a whole pile more. We did them in Ireland, and then I got it in less time. We're doing it in about 15 minutes. Once, so we had 20 in one place in Ireland and then 21 in another, a couple of days apart. And but they weren't as sick. So the more people have out of bounds. And with the other pearl of wisdom is don't be afraid to work on someone with multiple sclerosis. So the most likely cause of MS is mercury toxicity. The most likely cause of that is mercury amalgam fillings. And also Parkinson's, that can usually be mercury. So a lot of, lately there's been younger people with MS, some of that can be aluminium from many different sources. And the underarm deodorants is bad. I mean, I threw my aluminium saucepans out probably more than 20 years ago, but there are some really smart people who haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah.
Throw out aluminium saucepans. It's like unbelievable. My dad had Alzheimer's disease for a good 10 years, really bad. And his favorite dish was rhubarb, cooked in the aluminium saucepan. If you ever want to clean an aluminium saucepan, cook rhubarb. It's very acidic. It just takes the aluminium layer right off.
Oh my gosh. So
the main cause of chronic fatigue, this is a pearl of wisdom for kinesiologists. In 1988, I went into kinesiology full-time. I was part-time teaching, sometimes having to leave a job to do a workshop because they wouldn't give me time off, and then get a new job after the workshop. I think I did that many times. And that's why being a waiter was useful, because you could get a job anywhere in Melbourne. It's the, you know, it's the home of good food and wine. But this lady had chronic fatigue. She'd seen doctors had given up. There's nothing else they could do. They were quite wealthy. They could have gone anywhere in the world to help, but no one could help. So I started off with Touch for Health. Basic Touch for Health test. Everything she ate, she reacted to. She already knew that. So I did the Touch Health testing on the tongue. Confirmed everything she reacted to. Then I just balanced her. This in the early days before Kinergetics. So just put it on the table, balance, 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 rub lymphatics. And then at the end of the session, tested all the foods again. And there were 2 or 3 that she could have that seemed okay. And it was 100% accurate. She just then ate those foods, skipped the others. The next time I strengthened a few more. Next time, a few more. Within about 6 weeks, there was an incredible difference. And within 3 months, she was back at work. And that was from lead paint. She was an artist, and it's the lead paint caused by the paints in the artwork, in the paintings. And since then, I've had a few more very similar, but I knew what to look for. See, now we ask, what job do you do? Are you a dentist? Oh, possibly could be mercury. Or dentist, dental assistant.
Yeah.
How many mercury amalgam fillings do you have is one of the questions asked. Also, question you might not think to ask, how many amalgam fillings did your mother have before you were born? Because the fastest way for a woman to get rid of mercury is to have had children.
Yeah, that makes
And
a lot of sense.
I've even had the third child have unbelievable mercury toxicity. So it's not just the first and second, but the third child.
Mm.
And I had one client, and actually their mother had an amalgam filling. A few months later, they had glandular fever. A few months later, chronic fatigue. And they had that for years. And I did a quick test and said it's mercury toxicity, it's not chronic fatigue. And at the time, I didn't realize it's virtually the same thing. Like chronic fatigue is almost always mercury toxicity. So now we have some very, very good corrections. For those who haven't done Kinergetics, working on the kidneys, is that it's usually kidney overloaded. But by taking some out of fight flight, that releases the kidneys as well. So it's like that TMJ correction also helps the body start moving mercury. Remember, if you're in fight flight, you cannot efficiently move mercury because the reactive muscles caused by fight flight will block it.
Mm. Blimey, you've had a lot of experience. That's been fascinating to listen to. I'm so glad you've been able to give us your time and experience today. Thank you very much.
I've given a few of my pieces of knowledge, but the TMJ is the main one. And that test for TMJ, I think, is the best test out of any TMJ workshops I've ever seen. And I've done a lot of TMJ workshops.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Bettina.